Whenever I have people as accomplished as any of you, honestly, I love to go back to the beginning and just ask, what was your first job in this industry? The first time you felt you could call yourself a filmmaker or a producer? Did you start as like an intern on something?
The first thing I ever did in the film industry?
Sure.
I think it was cleaning up pigeon feces.
Amazing. Well, you can't just leave it at that.
No, you can't leave the pigeon feces. You must clean it up.
Was this for a short or?
No, yeah, I was working as a runner in London at a post house, and they had an influx of very fecally extravagant birds. And
fecally extravagant.
Yeah,
Make it sound so nice.
It wasn't, but that was my first job. I think I got away with it. I think I may have feigned illness the next day.
You only went in once?
No, well, they kept coming back. So, yeah, that was my first job.
For you?
Oh, my first job in this industry, I was a producer's assistant on a film that starred Christopher Walken, Eric Stoltz, and Viggo Mortensen called God's Army.
Nope, that's not the one.
And then they changed it to The Prophecy.
That's the one. Yes, I love that movie.
I still call it God's Army.
That is a better title, honestly.
Yeah.
Jaimee, a little bit of a quick trick question. I don't know if this is your first.
This is my first experience doing consulting for audio description, and I was RP consultant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And for you?
It won't be her last.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I have no idea. I think the first job I had out of grad school at AFI was a film called The West Texas Children's Story, which took place in New Mexico. And Val Kilmer was in it.
Oh, wow. Well, again, congratulations on a fantastic movie. I want to start at the beginning with Blink, and I'm curious how each of you became aware of this family and what interested you in bringing their story to the screen, because there's probably, real life is always stranger than fiction, I feel. You couldn't make this stuff up. But how do you sort of select your projects?
Yeah, with this one, we had a colleague and friend at MRC called Amit Day, a fellow Canadian, who brought the project to us. Their company had been following the project and brought it to Daniel Raw, my co-director. And, we were all aware of the story because I think there were articles in this CNN, The Guardian. And so, they asked us, do you want to go on this journey, travel the world and get to know this family and make this story? And it's not an easy, it's an easy question to answer when you're asked to do that. I think what interested myself and Daniel Raw in the story was, yes, we can make a travelogue of this. Yes, we have the personnel and the means to paint a beautiful visual backdrop of this family story. But what was more important to us, well, what is the core human value or the greater truth there? And for us, it felt like this was an exploration of a very early journey through grief as a family comes to terms with a complex diagnosis. And we saw that as something a little more universal than the very core fact of RP. And that was something that could speak to a very broad audience whilst also bringing to light a little more about the condition.
And Jaimee, you kind of had an unusual path to joining this film. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Diane and I met last year at a meditation retreat in a really beautiful spot called Jalapa in Mexico, where I actually now live.
I was very exhausted and emotionally drained after Navalny, so I was sent away to Mexico.
And in the opening circle at our retreat, I just let everyone know I have a visual disability, and when you come up, if you can just say who it is, because I don't recognize faces. And so I think it was like 3 days later at dinner, she was like, hey, do you mind if I ask you a little bit more, like what's going on? And I was like, yeah, super rare disease. No one's really ever heard of it. It's called retinitis pigmentosa. And she's just like, not only have I heard of it, I'm making a film about it. Wow. And so we just both broke down, because for me, it's like, no one's ever heard of it and you're making a film. It just felt like you said, you can't make this up. No. It just felt so synchronistic to be able to sit with her and hear about the story. And I think she said, I don't know what you're gonna do, but at least I want you to meet the family. And it just unfolded from there.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, the other connection that we have with Jaimee is the wonderful Kathy Eldon, who is in the audience tonight, who is our sort of fairy godmother and our impact with Navalny, runs a wonderful organization called Creative Visions, and they fiscally sponsor many of our projects. And weirdly, Jaimee was like talking about this like organization or this work she was doing, and she was starting a nonprofit, and she was working with this, fiscal sponsorship in Malibu, and I'm like, what is it? And she's like, Creative Visions. And I was like, wait a minute, we have Kathy Eldon in common?
Because I taught Kathy's granddaughter ballet when I was a kids dance teacher in the Palisades.
The world is small and the universe works.
Yeah.
Can we embarrass Kathy and make her stand up?
Right there. Stand up, Kathy.
Stand up. Let the people see you.
Yeah. Come on.
Woo! At what stage were you in the filming or the production of the movie at that point?
I think we were deep in the filming at that point. Yeah, we were very much. And I think we were beginning editing, and we were working. Yeah.
So I just remember that phone call where Di was like, so you're never going to believe this. And I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, well, when can we meet her? We need to talk to her right away.
It's like I was saying, truth is stranger than fiction, and I think your next movie should be about that, how you all came together, because that's crazy.
I mean, we knew we wanted to work with a consultant on the film, right? We knew we wanted to have an RP consultant, an expert, somebody who was living with the condition and deeply understood, the path that the family was walking towards. And I think, Jaimee was able to provide a lot of insight to us just through her own personal experience, and because we meet the family at the beginning of this. And I think you should speak to this, really, not me, and just in the sense of like how it reminded you of your journey.
Well, yeah, it was interesting to get to sit and watch this, because so much of what they're experiencing at the beginning of the film and the conversations Edith is having with herself internally and also with her children, I remember those moments and where I was. And I was 21 when I got diagnosed, so it was a very different trajectory. And it just really, again, is that universal experience of we're all stepping into the unknown, and we're all going to go through things that bring up grief, and it's a cyclical thing. Like, even working on the audio description for this, I was confronted with a lot of grief that I hadn't felt in that kind of way since kind of the beginning of my experience of feeling like I was losing access to things. So it was really powerful to see how this film, again, like not just about this experience of RP, but how that's the filter to talk about this human essence of grief, of family, of love, of resiliency. And it was a really beautiful moment for me in this journey to be able to look back and see like, wow, look how far RP has took you, has taught you, and the wisdom that now I get to support this storytelling and this team in this moment. So, yeah.
And with the exception of Jaimee, for obvious reasons, you all worked on Navalny together, and it which was directed by your co-director on this, Daniel Rohr, who won every award imaginable for Navalny. Can you talk about how a co-director collaboration works? Like, do you split up jobs or filming locations, or are you both on site to sort of, give each other advice?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to say is Daniel and I have worked together for, I think, best part 10 years.
Oh, wow.
I cut his first kind of long form project many years ago. We directed shorts together. And so he and I are also very, very good friends and have a kind of deep human connection that helps. It also means we argue a lot, but it helps tell. I think it can make sure that we have roles that we know are set and that we can trust each other. In this particular case, he was on the Navalny train and trail with the film whilst we were in principal production. So I was out in the field, and he and I just, we have a very easy relationship where every few days I would check in with him and we'd discuss where is the story going, what have we captured, because this is largely verite. And it was a process of just trying to craft as much of the story on the road as we can together. And then when we got to post, working in conjunction with the editors to bring the story to life.
Well, and Daniel also joined, as well as myself and Di, for the master interview, where you see different parts of us speaking with Edith and Seb and the boys underneath the stairs, those elements. Daniel was able to be there for that and make sure that he got to spend time with them during those periods too, because Ed was definitely like hiking in the Himalayas and doing all the crazy things and reporting back. But it was good for him to be able to spend that time with the family.
Were you the one trapped in the gondola with him?
Thankfully not. I got a phone call at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night from Seb. And I thought, what's going on here? We were set to join them a week later. And I get this call and he says, Ed, I've got some serious drama for you. And he says this 2 hours into the trip. He's kind of being ironic.
Yeah.
He didn't know at the time he was going to be stuck there for 10 hours. But, as a documentary filmmaker, you have this moment where on the one hand, the compassionate part of you is thinking, God, that's awful. But the other part of you is thinking, this is great. Thank you so much for telling me.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. And so, to be honest, and Seb told me afterwards, he was like, you sounded a little too happy and you're sorry. So I have to work on that. Clearly, that didn't do well there. But essentially, we found Xavier Mendez, this an Ecuadorian cinematographer who hiked up the mountain with the firemen and women who rescued the stuck tourists, and he did
on a few hours' notice, I might add.
On a few hours' notice, but we just put feelers out. We found Xavier, and Xavier did this incredible job of getting those wonderful kind of pen shots you get of the cable car outside, and the rest is obviously just Edith.
So that was my question. I didn't know if there was a cameraman in there with them or they were shooting it themselves.
No, this was all Edith. I think to hear her say it, it's very much it was a coping mechanism. It was Edith, given who she is, I think felt like if I can control the situation and ground myself, then I can feel a little more stable.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I may have encouraged her, but I think. Yeah.
There are parts of this movie that really do feel like an action film. Like I was very tense during that. Weirdly, I'm tense at the end credits because I just fell off a bicycle. So watching them, I was very like, no. And that brings me, I want to talk about the tone because I feel like in lesser hands, this could have been, for lack of a better word, sort of treacly, or it could have been really depressing. And you strike this beautiful balance of inspiring, but also, realistic. Is that something that, the family brought and you just captured, or is it a process of finding that in editing to some degree?
Yeah, I think our greatest fit as a team, as a whole creative unit, when we discussed the film very early on, and all of us here, and Daniel, was that it would be treacly, mawkish, and saccharine. And it's easy to do that. I think there was just a very clear path forward. That was when we make this film, we think about how we shoot it. We try to keep the camera low, shoot from the kid's perspective, and we try to be emotionally honest because otherwise this could be, I think you don't need to give much to get the emotion from a film like this. So it was just a question of being very clear as we started the journey.
And it's also, I think, I'll just say a testament to both of our editors as well. Ryan Mullins and Miranda Youssef really brought their A game to this film. And it was really lovely to have both a male and female perspective who both are parents and have children. So it was really interesting to see kind of that back and forth conversation during that time when they were both working on it together, along with, Diane and I are not shy about our opinions.
I just add that I think the conversations, Jaimee and I have had too about, speaking to what you said earlier, Jaimee, this is not a death sentence. Mm-hmm. The condition is not a death sentence, but we're treading a very delicate line because we're meeting the family very much where they are on their journey. And it was important for us to pay respect to the authenticity of where they were, but also recognize this is a long journey and one that you may look back on later and think differently about and see how far you've come.
And Jaimee, you mentioned to me outside, how when speaking earlier about, how this sort of reminded you of your journey. Mm-hmm. Far from being a death sentence, there are things you wouldn't have experienced if it hadn't been for this condition.
Yeah, I grew up as a dancer and went to the LA County High School for the Arts, and I was always looking at myself in the mirror to understand where my body was in space. And then once I couldn't see the mirror anymore, it was about feeling my body in space, which was so different. And when I started doing services like orientation and mobility and learning how to use the cane, I had an amazing instructor, Brian Bushway, who's known as one of the world's best echolocators. So we would literally walk around my neighborhood with a blindfold, and I would learn the sound signature of my house and other houses and the space around me. And I was like, wow, the world is so rich when you close your eyes and start to really feel your other senses. And I feel like that's one of the things Seb talks about towards the end is like, of course they're going to travel and it's going to be in their own way. And, you know, when Mia and Edith are sitting on the sand and she feels the sand and is tuning into where the sun is, it's this whole world that is so rich around us and we don't experience because we're so dominated by our eyes and what we're being hypnotized and mesmerized looking at, that there's this whole richness of sensation that exists. And I mean, all of the things that my doctors kept saying that I would lose. I mean, I was 21 when I got diagnosed and they were saying some people go blind at 30, some people do this, some people do that. And it was all the things that I could lose. And it's like, look where RP took me. Like, look at the richness in my life of experience and people that I'm meeting and perspective. And it's really just shown me there's so much beyond what the physical eyes can see. And there's so much when you watch this film and think about how this community can teach us how to perceive the world. There's just so much more available.
Yeah, and the only thing I just want to add too, you know, we were very intentional, obviously, with the audio descript file and for the film. And, you know, as filmmakers, those are part of our deliverables now, right? And for the most part, we just sort of call a company, you order your AD file, you pay your fee, you get it, you hand it over, and you go on with your life. And this has happened on the last couple of films, but this film, when it happened, it was just like, well, obviously this isn't going to work. Where, you know, the time code's off, or it's just not matching, or it's not properly translated. And that was not going to be the case with this film, right? Like, you cannot make this film and then have an AD file that like is not, and honestly, none of us as filmmakers can do this anymore. Like, after making this film, someone like Jaimee will be part of every project that we make, because the richness of an audio descript file and the access and ability for people who have visual impairments to then go to the theater and experience it is profound. And it was, you know, really eye-opening for me, for lack of a better term. You know, we had a screening on Friday night where at least 10% of the audience had a visual impairment to come and see the film. There were so many people in the theater that day that they ran out of the devices. Wow. And we had comments about how incredible the AD file was, and that was because of Jaimee's work and her ability to like really walk us through this process of what, you know, what is needed and how you can use words. I mean, we all write screenplays, right? But you would, you know, a man walks down the path is not good enough for these movies, you guys. So it's like, it's on all of us to do better for all of our communities. And, you know, and that was the real takeaway here.
Melanie, you mentioned that you all sort of split up the interviews at times, and obviously, you know, this family seems very outgoing and open, but you do. There's such a craft to the interview, and it seems like everyone is just so good at it and getting these people to open up. What's sort of the secret to building that trust?
Oh, I think that the family in particular really, I mean, by day 2, they had nicknames for the film crew that was there. I mean, Ed is known as the giraffe by the kids. And I, you know, and JS, who did phenomenal cinematography on this project, he is also Quebecois French, and so he speaks fluent. And so the kids really gravitated to JS. I mean, they call him Uncle JS now. And, you know, that's the scene where you see them playing in the bed, like playing Superman and everything. That's like 2 days into filming with them. And so I think the intimacy and the trust was gained by Ed and JS and our sound engineer who was on most of the international shoots, Giles, who I think they called Jellyfish. Is that right?
Yeah, because they couldn't pronounce his name.
But I think that's how that was established. And then, you know, for myself and Di, it was constant interaction with the parents from afar in terms of like making sure logistics were okay, because they are very, I mean, Seb is like down to the minute, like, okay, from 2 to 2:15 this is what we're doing, and he had to be that way because of the budget that they were on. But simultaneously he just so appreciated the fact that we would call him along with one of our amazing co-producers, Ann Rogers, and just be like, okay, so here's the plan that we have, here's what we think that you got, what we need to do in order to capture what you're doing, and then it's all going to change. And he was like, okay, I guess.
Heavily leaning on the guess.
On the guess. But yeah, I mean, it was like really establishing that trust. I mean, we have such a good rapport with the family now that, I mean, Edith has been texting me for the last 2 days, checking in, like, how did it go in LA? When are we all going on vacation together? You know, it's like, and I'm like, girl, you plan it. I'll be there.
Yeah. But not $200 a day. Come on.
No. I'm a little bit too much of a hotel snob. And everybody on this team knows that.
So your DP gets a loving name like Uncle, and you're the giraffe?
No, he had a nickname.
No, I mean, they also...
He was called the baboon.
JS was the baboon, because of how
he's
hairy.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of animals jealous.
He disputes that. No, I mean, they also called us Team Rocket for any parents, which is the kind of completely bumbling and inept villains in Pokemon.
Yes.
So, you're like, oh, Team Rocket, you know.
But didn't you show up as Team Pocket?
Yeah, we did show up as Team Rocket for a shoot. It didn't make it into the film. Yeah. No, but I think I just add that when you're working with minors too, there's the obvious reality that there's a collaborative part of talking to Edith and Seb and making sure that the kids are, comfortable. And we're not therapists. We're not qualified to be pushing kids into emotional places and all the family that they shouldn't go. So there was a delicacy around those things and how we approached talking to the kids.
I mean, we had early ideas that we thought maybe Mia would be more of the narrator of the film overall, but it turns out that a tween on her verge of being a teenager doesn't really want to talk that much, right? So,
Believe me, I know. You mentioned something that didn't make the film, and I'm curious, first of all, how many hours of footage you had to comb through, and it's so perfect as it is. But is there anything that just didn't fit into the film overall that you sort of miss or would like people to see?
I feel like you all have something, don't you?
Oh, that we miss?
Yeah, I thought you and Mel particularly have things that
I'm trying to remember. I just I'll only think of the skateboard, but it's not that movie. Give me a second.
For me personally, there was a much, much longer version of Mia's, kind of the first party that Mia goes to at school. We had a really beautiful, long, observational verite scene where we show her coming home from her last day of school, and she's talking to her girlfriends about how they'll be friends forever, and it's just this stuff that you can't make up, you get one time in a film that you cannot believe you're getting. And she comes home, she tells her mum how she's going to be drinking, is there going to be alcohol there? And then Edith and Seb get up and start slow dancing and embarrassing Mia in front of her friends. And it's just such a heartwarming and charming, longer look at this point in Mia's life that's slowly disappearing. And I miss that a lot. It's something we cut very early, and that always touched me at the time and touched me in the edit.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we filmed that actually never even made, I don't even think it ever made it into a cut, but was the amount of preparation around Christmas. Mm-hmm. And at one point, Edith calling and saying, okay, you guys, I need help. Like, give me some Elf on the Shelf ideas. And like things like that, where I was just like, this would be so fun. Like, and when we saw some of those dailies in that footage, I was like, this is gold. This is so good. And it's not in the film, but I'm sure it will wind up on social media in some fashion around Christmas time.
I mean, I'll just finish and say, to speak to that, just to be clear, we had an editorial idea that was that the film, initially, I thought that the film was going to weave back and forth between the present day and the travel. I was going to lean more into the concept of memory a little more heavily and how present day moments invoke the past in some way. And for that reason, we shot a lot around their lives and got a lot of beautiful footage, but we just found that it was a repeating beat. It didn't develop anywhere. And so we just have a lot of the same thing happening. Yeah.
I was just going to say, we have some profound footage on the cutting room floor of Leo in the tree when he gets up and JS asks him how he's changed. And he tries to, sort of pontificate that. But then he talks about looking at trees and how he just thinks the trees are beautiful and the leaves. And he just takes something so simple and talks about it in like such a childlike and profound way, and in a way that in many ways we all have to kind of look at the world, right? Like the fact that he can go all around the world and see all these amazing sights, but then come back home and climb a tree and be able to look across the yard and appreciate the beauty of another tree is just like, you're just like, oh my God, we all need that.
I mean, I'm just saying, if there was a network that wanted to sponsor a travel show with this family, I would watch it. Oh, and how many hours of footage do you think you had?
I think Rochelle Hamilton, our associate editor, went through about 200 hours of Edith's travel footage, and we shot probably, 200?
I would say more than that. I actually think I think Rochelle said when we were in Telluride that it almost was 300.
Yeah. So Rochelle,
there's a lot.
Yeah, she logged everything. She went through everything with a fine-tooth comb to the point. Yeah, she did an incredible job. She also, I think, her eyes were falling out of their sockets by the end of it.
How much of that footage was just them trapped on the gondola? 10 hours?
Yeah.
Overall, it was sort of, all films come with their different challenges. Usually money is the biggest challenge. But what did end up being the most challenging part of bringing this movie to the screen? Go for it.
I think the lack of prep time for production. I mean, there were times where I think we prepped Nepal in 36 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Producing this film was hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, I also think that and that's truly again, a testament to our team. Just being able to figure it out. I mean, Egypt, we didn't have enough time to get the necessary permissions that we needed. So we actually built our sound gear once we got to Egypt versus bringing it in.
I forgot about all that.
You blocked it out.
Of course you did.
I think I blocked it out. Yeah, I remember JS telling me afterwards, he said he got a phone call saying you're going to Nepal, and it was about 12 hours before his plane took off.
Wow.
At his cousin's birthday.
Oh. That's dedication.
Yeah, no, I think it was definitely, I think from a production standpoint, that's absolutely true. From a filmmaking standpoint, I think working with the children and finding the right way to be in their heads and in their space in a way that could help tell the story. You tell a film with kids, and the joy and beauty of children is their inherent irreverence and kind of not following the narrative logic of filmmaking or of everyday life, right? And I think for us, it was, you could fill this film with moments like that, moments that carry a kind of spectacular value in the sense of they're beautiful to watch, but don't necessarily push on anything narratively. And I think there's a value to that in a lot of films, and there's a value to that here. But finding the right amount of that to kind of do justice to who they are, but without taking too much away from the broader emotional arc, was something that we grappled with a lot, and that the editors helped to kind of solve.
Jaimee, for you, what does it mean to, have this film be coming out and for audiences to be learning more about this, just, personally, but also, I guess to some degree professionally?
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I mean, getting to see a group of individuals at the movie theater that have felt so isolated from the conversation just showed me how much this film means to the community at large, because blindness is a spectrum. And it's been beautiful to have an experience with creatives who have empowered me to hold this role as the AD consultant and RP consultant, and see how there's been a team of people who have truly cared about my experience and about the experience other people are going to have around this film. And I mean, it's been one of the most heartwarming things to look on social media and see people from the RP community just feeling so much joy that there's something out there now that's going to educate people, because oftentimes I'm the only blind person that people meet. And so it's just constantly having to kind of go through the script of what do you see and what do you need, and having to educate people on how to be supportive. And so to have this film also, like, one of my highlights from this experience was seeing when the family came to Telluride, and the kids in Telluride, the high school and middle school students, had screened the film on Friday before the family came. And when they came in, the kids from town rushed the family and were just like, oh my God, it's you. Like, you guys are amazing. The film was great. And I was like, these kids made RP cool.
Yeah.
And that's been my hardest thing, is like navigating the social experience, because most people get really uncomfortable when you walk into a space with the cane. They're like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know. I've never interacted, and people don't want to ask me questions. And if they do ask, it's the whole, well, that sounds so hard. That must be so heavy, instead of, what have you learned? What can you teach me about experiencing the world through how you see, So it's been a really, just honestly, like, life-changing experience to know that not only is this film here, but it's also pushing the conversation of audio description in a big way.
Speaking of social media, do you know the couple that lives in Seattle? I believe one of them has RP. And
are you talking about Paul and Matthew?
Yes! I'm obsessed with
I know,
Paul
they're
and Matthew.
hilarious.
And Matthew is constantly playing
tricks on him.
Yeah, they're so
And they have their dog Maple,
Yes,
and they're doing this whole thing right now where they're finding all of Maple's brothers and sisters. And
it's beautiful.
When you have a guide dog, they have a letter for the litter, so they're all M names.
Yeah.
So they have like this whole map of where all the different dogs are. Yeah,
they
I love
are
them.
amazing. You got to check them out.
Well, I actually had a little bit of a celebrity like moment, because on Friday, Molly Burke, who's also a huge YouTube, Instagram, social media influencer for fashion and beauty, also has RP, was in the audience, and her dog Gallop was her old dog. Her dog Elton John was there, and it's like, it's amazing, because they'll say, it's like these influencers talk about, like, their dogs have this whole other life, and people like know their dogs when they're out in public. And I had that moment where I turned to Melanie, I was like, I think that's Elton John and Molly Burke, and she was like, maybe I'll
Where? Maybe you could write a song for us. Well, I just want to remind everyone, this movie is now in theaters, but it's going to be expanding into even more this Friday. Please spread the word. It's such a special film. Thank you so much for being a great audience. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.